And to the analysis of Shields and Brooks, that is syndicated columnist Mark Shields and New York Times columnist David Brooks. Welcome, gentlemen. So I am tempted to ask you both, what would Charles Darwin think if he landed in the middle of our political and economic conundrum that we're in?
I haven't read Bob Frank's book, but I'm struck that social Darwinism was a very right-wing, laissez-faire idea in the 19th century, and now Bob is using social Darwinism, or a form of Darwinism, to push a more left-wing agenda. I'm not sure I know which side is right. I'm a little dubious about taking evolutionary ideas and transposing them to the realm of economics, because unlike animals, we have cognition, we have will, and we are able to do things. One thing that he's absolutely right about is, and this is moved within evolutionary thinking, is that we are not only fierce individualists, we're super cooperators. A guy named Jonathan Haidt at the University of Virginia says we're the giraffes of cooperation. We're really good at cooperating. And so he's right to emphasize the collective. I'm just dubious about taking Darwin and trying to make politics out of it.
And we didn't see any giraffes in that.
No, we saw everything but giraffes. I'd say if Charles Darwin would have come back, he would have real serious doubts about his theory. If he looked at the presidential lineup of candidates, I mean, do you think the species is improving? Chuck, you want to take another look at this?
Well, let's try to. This is my effort to move from Charles Darwin to the super committee.
Okay,
Mark, we got another fairly pessimistic report a few minutes ago from Janet Hook of the Wall Street Journal. Is that what you're hearing? That this effort to do something about the budget deficit is not going to succeed?
Yeah, I mean, Janet Hook is a superb reporter, and I think she's absolutely right. I mean, I think that we're now in the situation where it's when the great scorer comes to write against your name, it's not whether you won or lost, but who gets the blame. I mean, I think both sides are into sort of postmortems and positioning, rather than there's no realistic hope for a grand solution at this point. And I think, in all fairness, Judy, our political process, as we know, is pretty damn polarized, and the middle and both sides of both parties has been hollowed out to a considerable degree. And the idea that this could have been fashioned at this time, these circumstances, was probably an unrealistic hope.
What are you hearing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing the exact same thing. I think the tragedy of it is, if it was ever going to work, it was going to work under these circumstances. The rules were rigged to make a deal as possible as possible, which is to say there was going to be a clean vote on the House. They were going to meet in private. They had this sword of Damocles hanging over them, and they still couldn't reach it. And so it's a history of really 10 or 15 years of potential moments where somebody could have made a deal with doing some spending cuts, some tax increases, jam it all together in whatever form you want to do, and every think tank has their own version. But the two sides are just too far apart, and as Mark says, there's no center. And so, you know, they hope the election will solve it. That's what everybody's saying on the Hill. I'm a little dubious the election. Why should this election solve it when all the other elections solve it? So the short answer is, welcome Greece. We're going to be Greece.
So, are you serious?
Of course, yeah. No, I firmly believe that. I think in 10 years, I don't know when it'll happen, but I'm very pessimistic that we'll actually have the sort of deal we need. And at some point, what's happening in Europe will happen here.
And Mark, right now, if they don't reach a deal,
if you don't reach a deal, I mean, it's not the end of the world. I mean, it was written. David's right. It was well written to achieve a deal. But one of the real components of its reaching a deal was that if they didn't reach a deal, there would be $1.2 trillion in cuts that kick in January 2013. And Social Security and Medicare are exempt as the deal is written. So that's going to happen. If nothing does happen legislatively, if the president is as stalwart as he insists he's going to be, the Bush tax cuts will expire. Okay, so that expires for everybody. It's not simply for the 250,000 above. So you're talking about, over the next 10 years, some $7 trillion in revenue, just looking at it that way narrowly, Judy. I mean, that would be coming into the government, as well as the cuts that would be imposed. So it's not, it's not an impossible situation. It's not an ideal situation, but it's not impossible.
But if they don't reach an agreement, David, the markets presumably will react negatively. The American people, I mean, can they get any more down on Washington and on government than they are right now?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. Michael Bennet, the senator from Colorado, had a chart on the Senate floor this week where he compared the popularity of Congress to other institutions. And so Congress is at 9%. I think Paris Hilton was at 14%. The number of Americans who want to turn America communist was at 11%, so more than approve of Congress. And so that's very down. I think the markets have anticipated there won't be a deal. But if they don't go to the sequester, if they don't actually do the cuts, which I think is quite likely, I think they're going to try to wriggle out of them, then I think the markets will be upset.
So whatever sort of Damocles that was there won't be there.
Well, I think that's going to be the real fight. I mean, if there's a serious effort to avoid the automatic cuts, that is to frustrate, to eliminate the sequestration that's written into it. That's the Washington term, that those are automatic cuts, half of which will become out of defense. I think that's when the markets will look at it. I do will really take a negative look and downgrade. The fear downgrade becomes. I think there's a real chance for the campaign of 2012. I mean, I think it's steering us there now that this is an issue.
What do you mean
certainly
a chance?
To discuss this, to debate it. I mean, I think that this is made for Barack Obama. Whatever one says about him, he did put $3 billion on the table. That's out there. It made a lot of Democrats nervous when he did it. But I think it's there. And I have to say this, Judy. We now have, as a percentage of gross domestic product, taxes are the lowest than they have been in the past 60 years. 60 years ago, we did not have Medicare. 60 years ago, we didn't have Medicaid. 60 years ago, we did not have a defense budget of $700 billion. I mean, so what we're really talking about, I mean, is that the reality of tax increases. And I don't think that there's a rational person who can say that this can be done without spending cuts and spending curbs, serious, but with tax increases. And there was no net tax increase in anything the Republicans proposed.
Well, this is why I think the campaign will not settle it. The debate on the tax side will be between Barack Obama, who's going to promise not to raise taxes on the bottom 98%, and the Republicans who are promising the bottom 100%. So that doesn't get at the problem. And then on the Medicare side, Mitt Romney actually does have a plan to trim Medicare, but the Democrats are going to run on don't touch Medicare. And so I don't think either way is going to solve the America will not make up its mind.
So you don't see the campaign solving it?
I think there is a chance. I think there is a chance for it. I agree with David that you can't hold harmless everybody earning under $250,000. We're all in this.
Well, meanwhile, what is getting attention right now on the campaign trail among the Republicans, David, is Newt Gingrich. He's been continued to rise in the polls. He's rivaling Mitt Romney, either leading or tied with Romney. But then there are these new stories that have come out about money he was earning, working for Freddie Mac, for other organizations while he was working, trying to convince Congress to vote a certain way. What does all this mean for his candidacy?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be the nominee, and I think it's going to take a little while. But I think he's fatally undermined by this. If you're going to be the outside voice, you can't have taken the policy positions he's taken for the individual mandate, for all the stuff. He's got many more left-wing policies than Mitt Romney, by the way, over the course of his long career. And long and ideologically peripatetic career. But then he is the quintessential Washington insider, taking $1.7 million for Freddie Mac for being a historian. You know, come on, that's laughable. And then taking $37 million from various healthcare industries for supposedly not lobbying, but just for being a sounding board. $37 million. I mean, you know, and so I just think that he's going to be seen for what he is a very smart guy, a fountain of ideas, who's played the Washington game and made himself very wealthy off of it.
So you see his candidacy, Mark?
Newt Gingrich has had the ideal laboratory for his candidacy to rise. 8-person debates. All right. Newt Gingrich is confident. He's polished, he's well-spoken, he speaks in short bursts that are quite coherent, quite interesting. He's attacked the press. He has never been cross-examined. He's never been asked about his position on cap and trade. There's never been anything adversarial. Maria Bartiromo of CNBC tried it briefly in the debate out in Michigan, but I mean, he's never had, so this is a perfect place. And what has he used as his adversary? Not the other candidates, the press. he's beaten up on the press. But Judy, the reality is either Mitt Romney or Barack Obama will be the luckiest man in America, whoever gets to run against Newt Gingrich. He's a walking contradiction. He's changed his position time and again. He's the ultimate insider. If American business is so damn smart, what the hell would they spend $37 million for Newt Gingrich? I mean, really. I mean, Brooks is a lot smarter than Newt Gingrich, and he's at least consistent.
Well, one other Republican who's gotten a lot of more headlines this week is Herman Cain, David. He had problems answering a question about Libya when he was meeting with the newspaper editorial board, and then just yesterday was quoted as saying what this country needs is a president who's a leader, not a reader.
Right.
Yeah, well, lost the teacher vote with that one. I guess I'm a big believer in the 10,000-hour rule. That you should do things for 10,000 hours to actually absorb the bits of information involved in the field, whether it's journalism, whether it's playing the piano, or whether it's running for president. You should have put in the time. And there's a reason why all these outsiders flame out. Because running for president, like being a surgeon or like being a teacher, is a really hard thing to do. And it's really hard to do if you haven't been prepared. And he's like a lot of people we knew, and a lot of us had this experience. You didn't do your homework, you showed up at class, you tried to bluff your way through, and it got a little embarrassing at times.
So coast is clear for Mitt Romney, but we can save that for another Friday.
I mean, I'm a drinker, not a thinker. I'm a leader, not a reader. I mean, this is Judy. This stuff is it's empty. It's they're empty words from an empty head.
45 seconds left. Stephen Chu, the Energy Secretary, testified yesterday about Solyndra, the solar panel maker that took hundreds of millions of dollars in federal loan guarantees, then went bankrupt. Is Stephen Chu going to hold on to his job?
I think so. He's not the problem. The problem is if you think government is a good venture capitalist, you walk into these problems. Government should be doing basic research. It should not be in the minute details of when people are going to be laid off or what technologies a company is going to pursue.
I think Stephen Chu handled himself well. I think that even Joe Barton, the Republican from Texas, who's a pretty fierce partisan, acknowledged that he was a solid representative. But the problem is that there are political emails that are kind of embarrassing about holding off on the layoffs and so forth. And this is a vulnerability Republicans see, and they're going to try and run with. And it's understandable. If the shoe were on the other foot, the Democrats would do the same thing.
Well, we are so glad you're both with us tonight, and we'll see you here next Friday night. Mark Shields, David Brooks, thank you both.
Thank you.